Inflation is falling, but prices are still sky high. You've probably heard that inflation is cooling down, but every time you go grocery shopping or pay your rent, you still feel like your wallet is on fire. So what is really going on? Why are prices not dropping even though inflation is? Are we being lied to? Or is there something deeper happening in the economy? Let's break this down step by step. First, you need to understand what inflation actually measures. Inflation doesn't track the price of everything going down. It measures how fast prices are going up. So when you hear that inflation has fallen from, say, 9% to 3%, it doesn't mean prices went down 6%. It means prices are still going up, just not as quickly as before. Think of it like a car that is slowing down, but still moving forward. The inflation speed has decreased, but the direction is still up. That's why your groceries, your gas, your rent, they're not getting cheaper. They're just not rising as fast as they were last year. So technically, inflation is falling. But practically, you are still paying more. Now, let's look at why prices are staying high. The first reason is that once companies raise prices, they rarely bring them back down. Businesses are quick to increase prices when their costs go up, but very slow to lower them when costs fall. Why? Because you've already adjusted. You're already paying the new price. If you were willing to pay $4 for a loaf of bread last year, the bakery has no incentive to bring it back to $3. That's called sticky inflation. Prices stick to higher levels even after the cause of inflation fades. The second reason is that wages have gone up. During the high inflation years of 2021 and 2022, many workers demanded higher pay to keep up with rising costs. And employers gave in, raising salaries, hourly wages, and benefits. That's great news for workers, but it also means higher costs for businesses. And what do businesses do with higher costs? They pass them on to you, the consumer. So even as inflation slows, these wage increases keep prices elevated. The third reason is that supply chains haven't fully recovered. Yes, things are better than during the pandemic, but disruptions still exist, from shipping delays to shortages in materials to global tensions that make trade unpredictable. Every time there is a hiccup in supply, companies raise prices to protect their profit margins. And because the global economy is so interconnected, a shortage in one country can push prices up everywhere else. For example, a drought in South America affects coffee prices in the United States. A shipping bottleneck in Asia raises the cost of electronics. And conflicts in Europe or the Middle East can spike energy prices worldwide. Even small disruptions ripple across the economy, keeping overall prices stubbornly high. The fourth reason? Corporate pricing power. Over the past few years, many companies have realized something powerful. People will keep buying, even at higher prices. And once businesses learned they could charge more without losing customers, they didn't stop. Some call this greedflation. It's when companies use inflation as cover to increase prices far beyond their own rising costs. They'll say, due to inflation, our prices are going up, even if their costs have already come down. This is especially true in industries with little competition like airlines, energy, and big food brands. When a few major players dominate an industry, they can raise prices together, and consumers have no real alternative. So, even as inflation reports improve, the prices you see on shelves stay inflated by corporate power. The fifth reason is housing costs. For most people, housing is their biggest expense. And over the past few years, home prices and rents have soared to record levels. Even though inflation is easing, housing remains one of the stickiest parts of the economy. Mortgage rates are still high. Builders slowed down during the pandemic, so there is a shortage of homes and apartments. And as long as demand outpaces supply, housing prices will remain high, dragging up the overall cost of living. The sixth reason is energy and transportation. Oil prices, gas, and shipping costs affect everything. When it costs more to move goods around the country, every item from your groceries to your Amazon deliveries gets more expensive. And even when energy prices temporarily drop, companies do not immediately slash product prices. They keep them where they are, using the savings to rebuild profits or offset other costs. It's a slow adjustment process. So even if inflation numbers look good on paper, the lag in pricing means you don't feel the benefit right away. Now, here's another key point most people miss. The inflation you hear about in the news is based on averages, not your reality. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, tracks the price of a basket of goods and services like food, housing, healthcare, and transportation. But everyone's personal inflation rate is different. If you rent in a big city, your cost of living might have risen much faster than the national average. If you own your home and drive less, your experience of inflation might be milder. So while the national inflation rate might say 3%, your personal inflation could feel like 7% or even 10%. That's why so many people are frustrated. The data says inflation is falling, but their wallets say otherwise. Now, let's talk about one more powerful reason: the compounding effect of inflation over time. Prices don't go back down after inflation. They just rise more slowly. Think about it like stairs. Inflation pushes prices up a few steps every year. Even if inflation falls, you don't go back down the stairs. You just stop climbing as fast. So the $1,000 rent from 5 years ago became $1,200 during high inflation. And now, even with low inflation, it's $1,260. You're still paying more, just climbing slower. And that's the cruel part of inflation. Even when it gets better, your cost of living never returns to what it was. So what can you actually do about it? The first thing is to focus on what you can control: your spending habits. You can't change global supply chains or central bank policy, but you can make smarter financial choices in your own life. Start by tracking your spending. Most people don't realize where their money is going until they see it on paper. Once you know your patterns, you can identify where inflation is hitting you hardest. If grocery prices are killing your budget, shop in bulk, switch brands, or use discount stores. If rent is eating 1/2 of your income, consider a roommate, moving further out, or negotiating with your landlord. The second thing you can control is your income. When inflation is high, you can't afford to rely on a single source of income. Find ways to diversify: a side hustle, freelance work, or investing in assets that keep pace with inflation. Because when prices rise, you need your income to rise faster. The third thing, protect your savings. Leaving money in a low-interest savings account means inflation is silently eating it away. If inflation is 3% and your savings earn 1%, you are actually losing 2% of your purchasing power every year. Instead, look for ways to grow your money: high-yield savings accounts, inflation-protected bonds, dividend stocks, or even real estate if it fits your situation. The key is to make your money work for you, not just sit there losing value. Now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The reason inflation rose in the first place was a combination of massive stimulus spending, supply chain chaos, and record low interest rates after the pandemic. When the economy reopened, demand exploded, but supply couldn't keep up. That imbalance created a wave of inflation that hit everything: food, housing, cars, energy. Central banks then stepped in, raising interest rates aggressively to cool things down. Higher rates made borrowing more expensive, slowing the economy and gradually lowering inflation. But the effects do not show up instantly. Monetary policy takes time, often a year or more, to ripple through the system. So even as inflation metrics fall, the aftershocks of those years of rapid price growth are still being felt today. That's why you feel stuck in this in-between zone where inflation is technically lower, but everything still feels expensive. And here's another truth: some of those price increases are permanent. The global economy has changed. Labor shortages, reshoring of manufacturing, and geopolitical tensions are creating a new baseline for prices. In other words, the cheap era might be over. For decades, globalization and technology kept prices low. But now, companies are moving production closer to home, investing in automation, and facing higher costs that will likely stay. So, yes, inflation is falling. But we are adjusting to a more expensive world. That's the new normal. And the people who adapt fastest will suffer the least. So how do you adapt? By building financial resilience. Save aggressively. Invest consistently. Spend intentionally. And understand that your money today doesn't go as far as it used to, so every dollar must have a purpose. If you understand that prices rarely fall once they rise, you can plan accordingly. You stop waiting for things to go back to normal and start building a new normal that works for you. Because inflation isn't just about numbers, it's about mindset. You can't control the economy, but you can control how you respond to it. So instead of complaining that prices are still high, focus on how to grow your income, invest smarter, and build habits that protect you from future shocks. Inflation may be falling, but the world has changed. Prices will probably never return to pre-pandemic levels, but your financial strategy can evolve beyond them. So keep learning, keep adapting, and remember, the people who understand money don't fear inflation. They find ways to make it work for them.